Hi, I'm Datu Tim Hartman, Grandmaster Presas Arnis, President and Technical Director of the World Modern Arnis Alliance. I'm also a founder of FMA TALK, co-founder of FMA TALK Live, as well as FMA TALK Television. And you are here on FMA Pulse. My name is Tim Hartman. I am a senior student of the late Grandmaster Remy Presas, and I was the highest ranked American and one of 6 people promoted to the level of Datu before he passed. Well, I did a lot of backyard stuff. I watched the old Kung Fu series with my dad when I was a kid. I was 2 years old, and I went out in the neighborhood beating people up thinking, well, that's how we play. Years later, I got to the point where I could actually pay for myself to do martial arts. And at about 80, I was doing a lot of backyard training with my friends who were doing martial arts and Y programs, that kind of stuff. But about 84-ish, 85-ish, I was about to join this karate school because it was the school in the area at the time, had a lot of seminars and stuff. And then a friend called me up and said, hey, you got to check this place out at school. Walked in, the guy put a stick in my hand, said, let's bang sticks. I'm like, oh, great, because I liked weapons. And it happened to be a Modern Arnis school, and I just kept in the art from there.
And is that when you first met Grandmaster Remy Presas?
It was in that first year. My favorite black belt magazine was when he was inducted to the Black Belt Hall of Fame. And when I walked into school, there's all these plaques, and some had photos of him, and there's book covers. I'm looking around thinking, this place looks awful familiar. I know I've never been there before, but something about it's familiar. And then the professor walks in one day for a seminar, and we're going to teach at the police academy in Buffalo and doing stuff. And I'm like, you're the guy. And, so that was how I first got into it. And, my first look into it, it was kind of just like weird how it was my favorite magazine, my favorite article. It was drawing me in, but it was just coincidental that it happened to be the school that I find.
Were you in law enforcement?
No. The group that we were with, at the time, law enforcement agencies were a little more open. I do teach at the Virginia Police Academy periodically. My EDT program, which is my Edge Weapons Defensive Tactics program, is actually being taught during the Defensive Tactics Instructors Recertification courses. One of my guys teaches down there, and that's the program he bases everything off of, and they'll bring me in to help out. But at the time, one of the people we were working with was a professor at the college that the police academy was run at. So we said, hey, we had the Grandmaster here. Would you be interested in having him doing a stick course? Oh yeah, and then they came in and we did a whole thing there. And I come from a law enforcement and police family, but the craft was never for me.
Why do you think that FMA in particular is being used in law enforcement, or being used to teach?
Well, I don't think necessarily law enforcement. In this particular case, it's because there was a connection. I think a lot of Filipino martial arts material is very good for, actually I think a lot of martial arts period is good for law enforcement training. The problem here is, especially with the weapons training, we don't always understand the rules that they have. They have to fill out paperwork for one, they have to carry a sidearm, and the triangular footwork where you step forward, swinging through and stuff, would put their weapon in peril. Now, Filipino martial arts, in my opinion, is the best practical weapon-based system that I've come into. Now, that's a pretty strong statement. I haven't seen every martial art in the world. I may find a better program as I go for that, but the thing here is, when it comes to weapon training, practical use of weapons, I feel that the Filipino martial arts have a very simplistic method of training. It makes sense, but like anything, we have to remember, as martial artists as a whole, sometimes we use the wrong tool for the job. And when we teach, let's say we're talking about police officers, we have to remember that they have to keep their weapon side, which most people are righties, they have to keep that right side back. So we can't do that triangular footwork that we like doing to clearing the path for that weapon to travel. So we have to make modifications. And the other thing is that law enforcement doesn't get to put the time in training. I mean, most likely when it comes to hand-to-hand combatives, most martial artists have more training than police officers, unless they've seeked other training. So now what you have to do is modify our training for people that aren't going to have to put a lot of time and not be able to put a lot of time in it. So, you know, I think we have a lot to offer, but we just need to realize what we have to teach them with the amount of time and what works for their job. You know, obviously blade-oriented techniques aren't the first thing. They don't carry blades. You know, impact-based tools are the way to go for law enforcement. And you can modify them to use them as edge weapons, but still, you know, the police get to hit, the police get to control, but if they pull out a blade, you know, they might as well, for a use of force continuum, if they're allowed to pull out a knife, they're allowed to pull out a gun, and they'll do that first, because that's what they put the most of their training into. So.
That's great. You're the first one that's actually talked about that.
So. You know, having grown up in the family, it's not my cup of tea. I went to the police. My father died when I was 15. So when I was 21, I took the police exam, and I just realized halfway through this, the only reason why I was there was because it was my father, you know. And then I did it. I have all the respect in the world, you know, for the police. I mean, I work with our police, keeping an eye on our community. A fair amount of their family members have been students of mine. You know, the firing range is actually practically in my backyard for their outdoor range. When stuff goes on, I get calls from my people. Hey, you know, you're over here. Keep an eye on so and so. Okay, and then vice versa. You know, something squirrely going on, and I've got a very good rapport with them. And you know, it's a lot of people don't take the time to find out different needs. You know, so you know, it's I have a lot of respect for them, and I think as citizens, if there's anything we can do for them, you know, that we try to help them out the best we can.
Maybe we'll talk about what style of FMA do you practice?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a long story. I go under the banner now of Presas Arnis. My primary system was Modern Arnis with the late Grandmaster Remy Presas. We use a belting system. So by the time I was a brown belt, my instructor was beginning to get out of it, and I had left the school before it started to close. He was, and there was issues there in general. And then I got a phone call from a professor. He wanted me to continue training, and he was going to teach me. And he pulled me on as a direct student. When I was a brown belt, having the Grandmaster as your teacher, I'm like, oh wait. Years down the road, he opened. Let me see who was next. Bong Hornellas, out of Holland, Michigan, he went to camp, one of Professor's training camps. I liked a lot of what he was doing, so I started training with him. I eventually got a probationary black belt because he used a belting system, but I don't claim that anymore because I don't maintain it. You know, I look at those people who get the 10-year-old black belts, and then they don't train martial arts for the rest of their life, and they go, I'm a black belt. I go, no, you earned one. There's a difference between being one and earning one. But there's some things in that program, in the Hornellas program, that I still pull out of. You know, in 99, I met Ernesto Presas, and what had happened was Ernesto was in the hospital. People got word to me. I got word to Professor. They were arguing at the time, but I got him on the phone, and they started talking with each other. And then I met Ernesto about a year after that, and then we became very good friends because he was like, you got my brother to call me, you're like family to me. And then I started doing the combatant, I want to say 99-ish. So I added that to the system, or to my training regimen. There's some other things I do, but we used the Presas Arnis because, you know, I was the highest tested black belt in the States. It was a 6th degree, which first you go black, then you go first, which is a whole other couple can of worms there. I also was one of 6 to get the Datu title. So I was also training with Ernesto, and in 2007, Grandmaster Rick Manglanong, which is, I look at my being the West Coast counterpounder of me, he is to Ernesto what I was to Remy. And he and I were both promoted to 9th degree Grandmasters in the Philippines by the Presas family. So we were teaching both arts simultaneously for a while. And eventually we decided to blend it so we didn't play favorites. It's the World Modern Arnis Alliance because the whole thing comes from Remy and Modern Arnis. So you have Modern Arnis, was reformed by Remy. He taught his 2 younger brothers as Kuya. You know, when he went out on well, actually we're getting sidetracked, but we'll go back. That could be a side thing. I want to talk about Presas, or the Modern Arnis family just in general. So in 2007, that's when Grandmaster Ernesto promoted Rick and I. In 2000, Professor Presas opened the door for me to work with Ted Buat. Ted Buat was probably the leading person for the original Blinthwalk system taught by Anjan Bakan. There's a group methodology, then ungrouped. He does the ungrouped. So he recently
just passed away.
He just passed away on the 4th of July. I was training with him from 2000 to, I don't know if it was 2005 or 2006 when he had his stroke. So up until the point where he couldn't teach anymore. And I was going for monthly private lessons at his house. So that's another big portion of my training there. My external training is Bondo with Grandmaster Dr. G from the American Bondo Association. And he's mentored a lot of people like Guru Danny Asano, Joe Lewis, a few other people. He was huge in the 60s and 70s as a karate referee, but his style, the Burmese martial arts, if you didn't know better, you'd think it was a Filipino-based system. The way all the same concepts we do, they're just, Dr. G is a college professor, was more methodical with and the structured with his way of teaching. And then currently, did I miss anything? Currently, I'm doing Kun Tao and Sikaran out of Toronto. That's only about 2 hours from me. I just earned my green belt in Kun Tao. I only got my yellow in Sikaran because I had hurt my knee last year. I was in the middle of the rehabbing and I couldn't do all the kicking aspect. But now it's all good. Now I just gotta strengthen it. But I'm doing that now. That's for me. I like to challenge myself. It's nice having someone say, no, that's wrong. The Kun Tao I'm doing is from Grandmaster Lanada, so it's the Kun Tao with the W. And then the Sikaran's fun, and along with that, the instructor Grandmaster Mark DeLeon actually has got permission to teach both systems together. So currently I'm doing the Kun Tao forms, adding the Sikaran kicking, and he's good friends with the Geronimo family as well as the Lanada family. And then I'm doing a little Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've always done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since UFC 1. And now it's up to like 140 or something like that, or something for 150, whatever.
Like most people.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck? So I've always played with it, but now I'm working on an apprenticeship program to actually work towards my blue belt. I've just, some things you just want to round some things off and challenge myself. I want to have I've had some people want me to do some form of ground grappling with weapons and both impact and edge, and I have stuff from the Bondo we've used, but I've got a lot of BJJ people who are reaching out to me, so I need to know what they're doing. I mean, when it comes to karate and taekwondo, I'm in a karate taekwondo town. All my friends do it, so it's easy for me to outsource, to reach out and say, hey, how do you do something? Like, watch that. Hop in a class and get a mentality to see how they do things. And then I can relate it to them. But the BJJ, I don't know anywhere near enough to implement our stuff into what they do. So, but that's about it for my training right now. I mean, there's probably something else I'm going to throw in there sooner or later. But I go under the banner of Presas Arnis because we don't want to play favorites to the family. So, I mean, I could go, I can say Modern Arnis and I ignore Grandmaster Ernesto, or I can go Combatant and ignore Grandmaster Remy. So now we just go under the banner of Presas Arnis when we give out diplomas, it's 3. You have a Presas Arnis diploma, and then you have the Komutan diploma and the Modern Arnis diploma. But eventually, we're hoping, people have sentimental attachments to their arts. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I studied Modern, I studied Komutan. What's this Presas stuff? It's the 2 together. I still want a diploma in one of these, so we issued the 3. And eventually, like I said, we're going to eventually phase that all out. But that's what I'm doing at the moment when it comes to that.
About kind of how modern Arnis is looked upon, and you were explaining to us
Oh, yeah.
why. I think that's an important thing to cover.
Well, Professor had a good business model. Modern Arnis probably has the largest martial carbon footprint in the world. It's probably the most practiced art for Filipino martial arts. It's not saying it's the best. It was very good to get it out there. I know some groups, I don't know how large some of these systems are out there, but, you'll have some famous instructors, but they may have only taught, like Ted Buat in the Blintwalk industry is looked up to. There was only 30 of us. That was the whole thing. So there's a lot of systems that they only had a handful of students here, a handful of students there. So I'm not trying, and it doesn't take anything away from the caliber of the instructor. But what Professor did is he taught 2 ways. I learned as a standalone system. But he also taught it as the art within your art. So if you go to college and you change degrees, a lot of your credits can apply for the next degree. Well, you take a karate fighter or a taekwondo fighter or fill in the blank, generic martial artist. They've done a lot of training. So a professor would look at them and say, well, geez, you guys know how to punch and kick. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to teach you the stick. Or I'm going to teach you some of the wrist locks. Modern Arnis would be, if someone was to ask me a best way to, the trademark is saying it's stick fighting jiu-jitsu. Because Professor liked to lock people. He was best friends with Grandmaster Wally J, the founder of Small Circle. So he put a lot of locks and controls on what he did. He likes doing that. And it's actually more humane than smashing someone in the head with a stick, but it does feel good. But Modern Arnis could be the strongest and the weakest all at the same time. The thing here is he would build his Filipino martial arts on somebody else's chassis. So when you look at another system, a Modern Arnis guy that came from another system first, you look at him and you go, something looks wrong. And you watch them, you're like, they're doing it all right, but they don't have the body dynamics of a Filipino martial arts and moving like a karate guy or taekwondo guy. Well, that's because that's the primary system. The lower levels of Modern Arnis, it's about self-defense. So you don't need to have that flow that a lot of the Filipino martial arts, because it's like, all right, someone comes with a forehand or a backhand, how do you deal with it? We take the Filipino concepts and graft it onto what they're already doing. So Professor didn't build stick fighters at the lower level. Matter of fact, I think one of the weaknesses of Modern Arnis in the U.S. is that they don't spar. Now I talk about it as the third person. I've always been a little different because I've learned Modern Arnis as a standalone system. So I didn't have karate or taekwondo or judo to fall back on and say, oh, I'm in trouble, what do? I've had to make the whole thing work out from the ground up. But I'm probably the only Modern Arnis school in the country that the instructor started Modern Arnis and kept it that way. Now, I cross-train out. I'll be the first person to say it, but I don't cross-train into the system to learn it. I learned the system and then I cross-train out because it's nice to do other things. And Filipinos do that all the time. We just say, oh, look at that, it's cool, it's now part of what we do. Anytime 2 cultures come in contact with each other, they influence each other. There's definitely European fencing influenced the Filipino martial systems. And some people actually think that the Filipino martial arts systems are European fencing transplanted over. I don't believe that. I think it was more of a rubbing off on each other. Then you say European boxing's changed. Some people, there's a lot of stories that go back to the Philippines when the GIs were in there and they're teaching the Filipinos boxing. They started the bobbing and weaving because of the weapon elements, and the Americans were a lot bigger than the Filipinos, so they had to move. I'd like to believe that one. It wouldn't surprise me that the evolution of boxing just happened, because we know, you look at the pyramids, there's the Mayan pyramids and the Egyptian ones, and they both have pyramids, probably just aliens from different universes, I guess. But Many cultures, and that was a joke by the way, many cultures have boats that never met each other. Many cultures have had bow and arrows that never met each other, no influence. So, I mean, some things could go, but not being a boxing aficionado, it makes sense that the Filipino martial arts changed boxing as just as much as boxing changed the Filipino martial arts. So, with the Modern Arnis, I see that it softens people up and starts having them move, but you put 20, 30 years into Taekwondo or karate, you're not going to turn your back on something that you're high ranking and you've done. So when you see a lot of Modern Arnis people, they just move different than the Filipino martial artist as a whole. And Professor had a different job statement, a mission statement for each person. You want to learn self-defense or more practical self-defense. The guy next to you wants to learn how to be a Filipino martial artist. You both can learn stick work, but you're just looking to augment it while the next guy's looking to take things to the next level. I think we forget that being a stick fighter and fighting with a stick are two different things. You're like, well, they're both with a stick. Eddie Moron could pick up a stick and swing it at you. It doesn't mean they know what they're doing. They didn't put a martial artist, give them a stick. They may not have trained weapons, but they have some better ideas of combat. And then you can tell one of us pick up the sticks, and all of a sudden we're moving around. It's like, okay, it's a whole nother level. So Modern Arnis is looked down on at times because they don't understand what Professor was doing. And for the most part, he was teaching Filipino concepts for self-defense, grafting onto people. And then they get better and better towards what we do. And then there's some people who just dove headlong into it and tried to make it a primary system. Myself, I was lucky. I started in a full-time program. It was a full-time school. The person had learned another system but switched over and dove headlong into it.
So, actually, it's also the way I'm understanding it. It's also the fault of some of the instructors that took the other way that Professor Presas taught, where they just kind of like implemented in their existing style, but maybe they presented it as this is Modern Arnis when it was only just.
Well, oh Jesus.
And then if there's a lot of that going on, then people start seeing,
Okay, so I'm a straight shooter. I'm not prejudiced. I hate everybody. Just so we're on the record. Okay. Professor, I love the man. He's a father to me. English was his third or fourth language. It wasn't his primary language. So you got a guy who has a hard time speaking English and has got a thick accent. And then you got a bunch of guys trying to understand what this guy's speaking. And just like Miyagi or something along those lines, most people going to be watching this understand the P's and F's are backwards, but there's going to be some people watching this don't under. So Professor will go, oh, how are you doing, baby? Oh, wow. You'll be my partner today. Oh, it is that time. It is time. I'm sad now because it is time for us to depart. I go, yes, Professor. Every time I depart, tears come to people's eyes. Some people thought he was being funny. Not everyone realized that's just the way it was. And sometimes when people are communicating things, it doesn't always translate well. And I think some people misinterpreted what Professor's meaning was. I think some people chose to misinterpret what Professor was saying. I can't tell you who's whom. And also going to be based on how long they were around Professor. This is the Modern Arnis section of our curriculum. Okay, boom. Versus this is Modern Arnis. Referencing, maybe someone's trying to reference where the material comes from. I don't try to always tell people where my material's coming from at that time. I don't want to sound like a name dropper. Oh, look, this is Tai Chi, this is karate, this is da 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 da. You don't have to tell it in every single technique. And it annoys me when people do that. Look, I'm doing silat now. No, you're doing a silat move. You're trapping, you're hitting. Oh, here's one silat throw. If I do a couple of judo throws in my curriculum. I don't teach judo. I do a couple moves. And when people see me do something, or I'm putting a Sikaran kick into my curriculum, I'm not doing I'm doing Sikaran, but my students aren't doing Sikaran. And some people just You know, if Professor had a better control of the English language, there would have been a lot less mistakes or problems like this. But that's with a lot of Filipino instructors. And we know what we're talking about. I mean, you know, it's not like this hasn't happened elsewhere. It's just Professor had the largest Filipino system being taught to date. And of course, with that quantity of people, you're going to have that quantity of problems. You know, people talk about quality issues and all this other stuff. Well, let's throw another one. Taekwondo. It's the largest martial art taught today. Period. You know, people pick on them because we're jealous because they have a better business model. But you take any system of martial arts and give them the numbers that Taekwondo happens, we're going to have quality control issues. So, what do you think? You guys talked to a lot of different people. What do you think the average Filipino martial arts school size that you've bumped into? How many students? Average.
10, 15, maybe.
Okay.
If even that.
I got 100. I'm willing to bet you that a lot of your stuff is a higher quality than my students, because I have to manage 100 people. Now, eventually they get good. But the thing is, managing those kind of numbers, I'm not worrying about trying to bring them up to the top level. I look at it as their training is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay. Karate styles were very good for military systems because you can teach masses all at once. And if they're supposed to be doing a kick and they're doing a down block, you can say, hey, yo. For those who ever watched Enter the Dragon, when you watch them walk through the courtyard, I can't tell how many times I can see the lions doing stuff backwards. Maybe I'm OCD, but I know other martial artists have noticed the same thing, that they're off cadence and stuff like that. Modern Arnis at the lower levels is taught like a military system where it's for easier deployment to greater numbers. That has nothing to say that it's better or worse than anyone else. It's just that it's a different mission statement. Like I said, I've got 100 students, you know, that was before the recession hit, you know. And when I go to clubs, they're like, we're lucky to have 10, you know. And I look at people and go, you guys rock, you know. And they're looking at stuff and I was like, well, what belt level would I be? You'd be here, you know, because, you know, when you go to the military, basic training teaches you basic stuff. A foot soldier is a disposable piece on the playing field. So that's how a professor would do. Teach the masses. Then the people who stick around, he gives more attention to. And that would be kind of going for specialists. People who stay in longer in the military get more training. You get some people who do a 2 to a 4 year hit because they want their college. So how good of a soldier are they overall? Then someone who's been 8 years. Oh, well, look, they've got into specialty school. They went to jump school. Maybe they're special force and they got higher training. You know, oh, and they're in another 4 years on top of that and they get more and more training. Well, that's the methodology here. You teach the masses because you're going to lose a bunch of them. Those who stick around learn more. So, you know, the strength is the weakness of the system is that when you see it's designed to be taught to the masses, you are going to sacrifice some quality. You're not going to do the individual attention. Filipino martial arts, to me, are it's like learning Wing Chun or pushing hands. It's got to be done one-on-one because there's a feeling about it, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's got to be that feeling. But a lot of the stuff the professor did was geared to get the masses going and then give them more attention as the thing goes longer and longer. So, you know, you're going to run into issues where when you have if you want to keep quality control up, you need to either keep the numbers down or have more staff. And my staff helps me out quite a bit with my classes, so I can try to keep it up as much as possible. But just got to remember, the more people you have, for every person you add into the group, that much your attention is split. As opposed to grooming one person to be your good training partner. I got to do 4 people. Now I got to do 8 people. Now I got to do 20 people. So things change as we go that direction. So
that reminds me of the stories that we hear. I mean, that's actually how, not just Filipino martial arts, but you know, when they had to teach villages to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, it's exactly what you're saying. They have to teach the masses the practical stuff. You know, the basic stuff that's going to work. You know, just to be able to defend yourself. And yeah, a lot of them get. You know.
That's how Professor started.
Right.
Professor was was during World War II. His father was teaching the guerrillas. They were up in the mountains, and they had sheets separating the areas so the men can train. The women are cooking and cleaning and whatever. And then So professor looks through the sheets and he sees the guys doing the technique. So he picks up a hunk of wood, it was probably rattan, but who knows, and there's a tree, he starts practicing all the techniques on the tree. Then they say stop, go to the next technique, he looks through the thing, all right, boom, boom. Eventually they go to do graduation, he lines up. So I was like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm here for graduation. What? He demonstrates everything. His grandfather was so impressed he took him under his wing. So, and that started the Presas family system, or at least the next generation. But, you know, when it comes to teaching the masses, it's just the basics. The angles of attack go a long way. You know, I don't think during World War II they were worrying about grabbing, hitting. It was probably just block, counter swing. A lot of Filipino martial arts changed because of World War II. There were some that were stick oriented, and obviously some blade oriented, and some, when they were stick, they added a blade element because a hunk of rattan against the bayonet on the end of a rifle isn't as effective as a machete or your bolos. And then some of the systems kept the blade, some stayed blade, some kept the blade to the repertoire, and others went back to the stick. Professor's system, a lot of the fighting, you know, the bandia band and the figure eights and the ocho ocho, the rompidas, a lot of the striking systems, to me, if you look at them, they're more cutting systems. And I know Professor, you know, there's things he definitely does as a blade, as his father and grandfather taught him during World War II. But it just changes the tool because it's a more humane tool and it's a more accessible tool. It can be an umbrella, it can be a mag light, it could be a tire iron, the jack for your vehicle, and whatever. So that's why I like the impact tools, because the two reasons. One, edge weapons, you know what the finish is supposed to be. You know, with an impact tool, you can put the person down or you can contain them, or both. So it's nice. It has the versatility. You know, I don't want to have to take someone's life. I never have, and I never want to. I know people who have, for their professional real life experiences, and there's a lot of baggage that brings to them. And you know, we talk about physically healing, but they have to harmonize themselves, and sometimes it doesn't always happen. And I don't ever want to be in that situation. You know, so I make sure that the things I teach that are in my motor memory, that I'm not automatically going for certain things, because when motor memory kicks in, you really can't control that, you know, in the heat of the moment.
You're covering a lot of things that I think, you know, needs to get out there.
You know, I've got the internet as a vehicle for me, so everyone sees. When it comes to Filipino martial arts, I don't think there's anyone who's really out there more than I am promoting what we're doing. Not to say that other people aren't doing good stuff. It's different, so I don't have to worry about jamming everything into this interview, because a lot of people are already seeing what I'm doing. You know, so I've got things that tick me off about the industry, that it's just, I think if we all agree to certain things about it, it would be better for all of us. So.
I mean, there's still why do you think FMA is not as big as other mainstream martial arts?
Oh, well, that's a good one. Why? Okay. Because we're too tribal. First of all, Filipino martial arts, I think, are great for practical use of the weapons. The thing here is we teach other karate and taekwondo schools and stuff like that. We add to their base, but they're never going to turn their back on what they do. They're always going to keep that, because they put decades in that kind of training. I was fortunate to take my passion and turn it into my profession. And I had good business models. I joined school owners associations that let me do these things. But we have to remember things in the big picture. You know, you got people who are, I mean, how many people do you know, rhetorical question, how many people do you know that started in Filipino martial arts, that didn't start in karate or taekwondo or something along those lines, jiu-jitsu, whatever? You've worked long, you've made a lot of contacts, and now you're going to turn your back and start over from scratch. You know, it's not like you lost a job. You're adding something to the base. The problems in our industry is that, well, I guess the question here really is, do people want it to be big? Okay. Some people just do this because it's their passion. They don't want a big school. They just want to have a handful of people. So of course it's, you know, when you got people doing that, now if people want to get the word out, then they have to change things. And the first thing here is, here's the big one, The secret of having a successful Filipino martial arts school. Teaching children. So, now this is not rhetorical, how many schools have you met, or what do you think the percentage of the people that you've talked to in the industry that actually teach children?
For FMA?
Yes.
I can't think of...
Well, now you know one. There's schools. I know there's schools. But it's a minority, not the majority. If you can't teach children, then you're not going to be able to keep the business going. It's as simple as that. They keep the doors open. My adult students, I just did my training camp. My adult class has been averaging 3 people every night since camp. I think I've got 20 adult students right now, 20, 30. The rest are kids, you know. I looked a long time ago and said, I need to work on my adult program. So I teach children. If I have an adult, they'll leave in 6 months to 3 years. Whatever happened, you know. Children, if I get them hooked, really into it, I can have them for decades. I've got one of my guys I just lost. I didn't lose him. He's still attached to the school. I had him since he was 5 years old. He just graduated from the university at the age of 22. But he's doing films now. He's producing and doing all this stuff with that. We're working on a few projects ourselves, actually. And he helped me with the Modern Arnis minutes. He was Ryan. He's the one that helps me teach the Modern Arnis minute. I've had him, let's see, time to do math, was that 17 years? No. 17 years I've had him for. You know, now he's going on to do something because I took a 5-year-old in. I got 4 other kids that are doing the same path, and probably when they hit 20, 22, depending on where they go to college. But at 13, I let them go to the adult class. Now all of a sudden my adult class gets huge because there's people there. Now, when you see an active school, people always sit there, I like a small school. I'll look for those because, you won't get lost. You get that individual attention. People join big schools because it must have something good going on. If you want an adult class, you got to teach kids because the kids become adults. I've joined the business associations. We did the Little Ninjas program for the 4 to 6 year olds, or 3.5 to 6 year olds. So I don't want to teach that. And a friend of mine, I showed it to him. I go, well, I'll just wait for them to get older. No, you won't, because they'll join Taekwondo. And if they're going to do Taekwondo, we're never going to get them. The majority of my students come in fresh. They don't come from other systems. I probably have, I'd say 3% of my home students. Not obviously, most of my clientele out of for the organization are karate and Taekwondo guys. But if we're talking people that I teach at my headquarters, 2 to 5% of them have trained elsewhere. The rest come through the door and they're mine. I don't have anyone else's habits that I have to build off of. I don't want to say breaking habits. It's not bad habits, it's just different habits, So I have to add to their motor memory. But, if you're not teaching children, that's not going to happen. People need to understand, here's your business 101. So the first thing you need to do is teach children. Second thing, you need to have a uniform. Now that doesn't mean a karate or Taekwondo uniform, although I do use its karate uniform. But in the summer, school t-shirt and fight shorts. If everyone has the same shirt on, the heck with the pants, just get the same t-shirt on. First of all, that's a retail opportunity for the school. So if you're paying rent somewhere, you're selling t-shirts, it goes towards rent. Or it goes towards getting new sticks. Or if you're trying to do this for a living, it goes to paying the bills so you can put food on the table. Everyone wants to be part of a team. Okay, you go to any sporting event that sells jerseys, how many people in the stands are wearing basketball or football or hockey jerseys? Boy Scouts have uniforms, Girl Scouts have uniforms, basketball teams, the police, go to the church, the nuns wear a certain thing, the priests wear something else, You don't have to sit there walking around with belts or something. But after teaching children and having some form of unified attire, you need to have something that's going to show levels of progression. It doesn't have to be belts. It could be colored t-shirts, it could be armbands, it could be patches, it could be baseball caps for all I care. Well, I do consulting.
Right.
For the FMA.
Sure.
We used to say the one guy I knew he was a Mickey Mouse martial artist, so instead of giving colored belts, he gave out colored Mickey Mouse ears. But whatever you do, you need to do something. But the thing here is you need to look professional. Even in a part-time club, people like looking part of the team. You know, so, but if you teach children, have a uniform and some form of grading program that people can see progression and give them goals, a goal-based thing, then you can do. Professor sat there, Filipino Martial Arts didn't do uniforms, didn't do belts, anything. He sat there. And he was the first to do this, and everyone gave him shit, but it didn't stop people from copying him. It was, all right, what's karate have that we don't? They have uniforms. So he went with the red pants and the white shirt. What else do they have? They have a belt. Okay, so he put a belt together. He did the colored border belt. And he goes, what else do they do? Katas. So he put in stick forms to be katas. In the States, he actually put in open hand forms as well. And he called it Filipino karate. First of all, the art was Eskrima. It wasn't Arnis. His first book was The Practical Art of Eskrima. He changed the word to Arnis because his wife recommended him doing it because no one was doing Arnis, so it was a whole big thing. And now with the Arnis bill, which a lot of people say the Eskrima bill, it's like, no, it's the Arnis bill. Which is fine, because I always looked up to Eskrima. It's all the same damn thing anyways. But it's cool that Arnis is now getting top billing for a change. But everyone, Professor was the first to do all those things, and everyone hopped on. You have these things in a club, it will help you get better at what you do. You don't have to believe in the system, but these are tools. That's all this. It's just a different tool. The belt doesn't mean jack, but if it's okay, beginners wear a white t-shirt, intermediates wear a blue t-shirt, advanced wear a red t-shirt, and then black is for the instructors, at least you have 4 levels to go for. Grandmaster Haron's a good friend of mine. Students wear black t-shirts and the teachers wear white ones. That's the 2 things. That's it. Okay, that's cool. Because then you got something that you can visually go for. So the Japanese did the belting system, the Americans colorized it. That's the only difference. But I mean, still all the levels are there.
Right.
A lot of times it was like, was it Aikido? It's a whole bunch of white belts, then 3 browns, then black. A lot of Japanese styles, a whole bunch of white belts, and then eventually they started making different colors just so it's easier visually for an instructor. I've changed ours a little because Professor did yellow, 2 blues, 2 greens, 4 browns, 11 blacks, and there were some issues with that. And instead of having 2 different blues, I just changed the low blue to an orange and kept the high blue as a blue because visually I can sit there and say, oh, you're level 3. It was white was level 1, yellow was level 2, 3 and 4 were low blue, high blue. So now it's like, okay, so level 3, instead of being low blue, it's now orange, and I can visually go through the room. How many orange belts do I have here? Okay, great. You guys are working this. Blue belts, you're working that. Yellow belts, you're working this. Good, go. And it just helps me give directions. No different than having stripes on your sleeve for the military and stuff, All the same thing. Grading's everywhere.
Let's talk about that then. How did FMA Talk start? Did you start it or?
Yeah, well, actually, it goes back to Martial Talk. A friend of mine, at the time, I was one of his clients. He did my web design, Bob Hubbard. He tried to launch something a while ago, and it just didn't work. I told him what the format was, and this was 99-ish, 2000, I'm talking. I go, okay, discussion forum, I'll tell you what. You build it, I'll populate it, because I know people. And it's just when the internet was becoming open to the public. So he built Martial Talk. So it started first and foremost being a Modern Arnis forum. It had all the different systems, but we populated Modern Arnis. Well, I used to teach a lot of Kempo camps, so I got a lot of Parker's Kempo people. So then it became Kempo. Then it got really big. There's more Kempo people than Arnis people. And then slowly but surely it filled out the whole thing. We went through some things. We had some bad times on Martial Talk because everybody being new to the internet, not realizing just because they can post that they should post. Very much like Facebook these days. And it got real ugly for a while, and then we cleaned up shop. But in the meantime, I wanted to start over, and I wanted to do something. There was enough traffic for FMA to form FMA Talk. So that was my first thing. So when it comes to a discussion group, it's jockeyed back and forth with FMA Forum. In the U.S., it's the number 1. It's gone, FMA Forum and FMA Talk have gone back and forth being the most populated one in the world. It was, bang, 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 bang. FMA Forum is more for the Filipinos, more from the Philippines specifically. And FMA Talk is more for the non-Filipinos, And they do a bunch of functions in the Philippines with FMA Forum. So they use it for them to communicate, hey, I got to gather and come up. So it's a great tool, and it's grown bigger than the Philippines, which is the cool part. So we did the same thing over here. Martial Talk split off Kempo Talk and Filipino Talk, FMA Talk, and then there's some other ones they were splitting off. So Bob Hubbard and I, he does the back room stuff, tunes up machine and stuff. I do the front admin. I got a few other people that help me out, but so it's a discussion group. It's good for putting up events. If you want to talk martial arts, it's a very you've got FMA Pulse. You have FMA, myfma.net. Like FMA, myfma.net, they're more of the Facebook of the FMA industry. And it's different. You can network with people differently over there. FMA Talk is about networking and discussing things. And what we spun off from that is FMA Talk Live now, which is on YouTunes. It's podcasts that you can download for free. We've had a bunch of different people on that. And then we have FMA Talk TV, which is our YouTube channel, which worked with, and then I put it back, and now we're bringing it back out again. And we're combining that with Martial Talk TV because I'm very fortunate to meet a lot of people in multiple martial art industries. So I've got my staff who's going to be doing interviews for karate, jiu-jitsu, whatever, and then the Filipino martial arts, and then obviously the Filipino will go on both. But FMA Talk is going to be Filipino-based system where the Martial Talk gets everything else. So that's about what we're doing with them at the moment. I don't think we're doing anything else. I don't think there's any form of thing on top of that. We got a discussion group, interviews, and then the video channel. That's the whole trilogy, Trinity. We're working with that right now. So, but I think it's been around 6 years now, 7 years. And obviously with Facebook, it's gotten a little slow. But the problem with Facebook is you post something and then it gets shoved down to the bottom. In ours, and I remember being on yours a few times, you could search things and put it in the search bar and go, okay, it comes up. So that's the difference with things like our sites versus Facebook, where Facebook is kind of post, fire and forget. You put it up there, everyone talks about it for a minute or two, and then it disappears. You can find it in your history, but you can't find it. It won't be in a topic. So that's why I think sites like ours are very important, because you can find and do research and post things up and see interviews and go from there. So we're looking at possibly changing our software over from vBulletin, but for the most part, everything's still staying the same format. Well, I know Mr. Malmo. All my interactions have been pleasant with him, and we're doing the same thing. We're just doing it a different way, and we all have different clientele. And there's going to be some clientele that overlaps, and some clientele that are going to be specific. Some people want a discussion forum. Some people want that Facebook feel to it. Whatever. You got to find out what some people want to lurk in the corners, and other people want to be proactive and working out. The nice thing about FMA Talk is that we're proactive on getting rid of nonsense. If you're on there and someone's taking a shot at you, there's a little button, report to moderator. You got to use it. If someone is found, we've kicked multiple people with fake accounts off. We don't bring extra attention to it. They do the crime, boom, gone. If you start screwing around, you get a warning. If you're going excessive, you might get a suspension. Eventually, you get banned. And recently, we've got some people that I warned them, they didn't listen, and they went forward. You're gone. And but at the same token, you got to have thick skin. Someone takes a shot at you. If you're putting yourself out in public, people. I was the last Datu. I'm Puti. So as a white guy doing a Filipino martial art, a lot of people taking shots, and I was very close. Professor and I had a father-son relationship. He would call me Anak. I would call him Tatay, and people were like, well, what's going on? Tim's a nut? Yeah, sure, whatever. And then the Filipinos would be looking at me trying to say, I don't see Remy's eyes or anything here. And then the one time he said, this guy's like a son to me, people got really twisted about that. I thought I was Remy Jr. I thought that's... Like, we just looked at each other. Tatay, Anak, done. Because people just get jealous and, so, but when you're in the public eye, I think the thing is, the more people bitch about you, the better you're doing. Unless you're a real total idiot. And sometimes I've been that total idiot guy. You know, I've done a lot of stupid stuff on the internet. And, you know, when Professor died, I lashed out at a lot of people. I don't think I did anything wrong. I just may have I was a little overzealous with certain things. And when it came to stuff on the internet, I was reactive. I wasn't proactive. I didn't go after people. People attacked or put stuff out there. And, you know, if people are holding me accountable, then everyone needs to be held accountable. It's got to be straight across the board. So, but I mean, you know, just on the net in general, once you put yourself out there, you got to realize that some stuff's coming your way. So, you know, if you have some questions, you just hit report to moderator. If we think that you've got too thin skin, we'll just say, you know, just suck it up. Okay, then we find a pattern, and then we eventually get rid of people who don't abide by the rules. I've had to get rid of masters and grandmasters that just didn't know netiquette. So this is a shame because they're great sources of information, but they just don't understand how to interact on the internet. So what do you do?
You know, the thing is, what you're saying is when you do put yourself out like that, you know, you're gonna get attacked. And
well, it's harder for me because I'm a white guy, and I understand, you know, just like, because it's still there. In Japanese martial arts, they got through that. Actually, what they're saying, and in many ways. So I was in at an event, and the Japanese, they were going through this. They go, you know, the problem is what? The Japanese, the Caucasians are more Japanese than the Japanese are, because now it's all that Western culture. So and it's not just, it's the non-Filipinos and the non-Japanese are trying to embrace the culture, and those inside their own are like, no, they're becoming more Western in general. And it's like, you know, if you really, you know, it's funny when you look to certain people and say, that guy's more Filipino, but he's not Filipino, exactly. Anywhere, wherever you go training martial arts, you'll find that people want to become Western. You know, and, you know, a lot of the Japanese martial arts did things because it was in their culture. You know, sitting around meditating for hours at a time, and, you know, talking about how long it takes to go from belt to belt. It was in their culture. Now their culture's changing, and they're having problems keeping. You know, why is Filipino martial arts a minority in the Philippines? It's changed a lot, but karate and taekwondo karate was more popular. Why? Well, think about it. It's a third world country where it's hard to keep money to feed your family. So you go do Arnis, and they hit you with a stick. Oh, that hurts, and maybe I'm not being able to work for a few days. You can't put food on the table. But karate, you don't have to. You can still bust your butt and get a great workout, and still being able to work the day after. So they started going there. That's why professors went to modern Arnis, went stick on stick, versus hitting to the head and the hand. And then he called it Modern Arnis, and people got excited about it. Filipino karate, Filipino jiu-jitsu, kung fu Filipino way. These are, if you ever have his pink book, the big ones, they have all the clippings in the back, and it shows all the different marketing things that he was doing. So it gave that heritage. But, you know, even today, you still see shitloads of people doing karate. With the Arnis bill, obviously the shift is going. I don't think it's got to that point yet where it's at least 50-50. You know, and some people are just doing it because it's in their school system. Are they doing it after they get out of school? And as we know, in the Philippines, you got to pay for a certain level of schooling. So what happens once you know, do you get to that point where you're getting that Arnis training, or do you miss it because you have to put food on the table for the family? Who knows? I have about the Presas family for Filipino martial arts were probably the equivalent of the Gracie family for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of different things, but there's a lineage issue that I want to go over, because professor left the island to go training martial arts when he was a teenager. His two younger brothers literally were in diapers when he left. There's a big age group. They were never there. He went over, trained the Balintawak, came back. He taught his younger brothers the art and the craft. Modern Arnis, the family art Modern Arnis was built on the family art. And then Remy taught his two younger brothers, who were all doing the art together, all in the same organization. Eventually, Ernesto went and developed his own thing, which was double stick, and that became Kombatan. Roberto went over and developed his own stick and dagger, which became Hinigaran Arnis de Mano, and Remy was Modern Arnis. Remy created modern. Off of that, Ernesto created Kombatan, and Roberto created Hinigaran Arnis de Mano. Recently, I've seen some stuff out there and this is the first, you get the first time that there's potentially political comment from me, that I plan on doing something about it or saying this. It is not, and my highest belt ranking that I received from the Presas family came from Ernesto. So when I say this, it's not about hating. It's about setting things straight. It is not Modern Arnis Combatant Ernesto Presas' legacy. Ernesto Presas' legacy is Combatant. Remy created Modern. He taught his two younger brothers, and then eventually they split off to do their own thing. A lot of the stories about Remy have been relabeled with Ernesto's name on it. And it was not being done by Ernesto. It was being done by his students because they don't know. When you've got a bunch of people from around the world, Remy was the U.S. guy. Ernesto was the European guy. And you got everyone trying to speak, everyone's trying to speak a common language, English. So you have the Swedish, you have the German, you have the Danish, you have all these guys trying to speak English, and a Filipino whose English is not the primary language. They're all trying to speak English, and things just don't get around. I've had people say, oh, what systems do you do? I do Modern Arnis and Combatant. Who taught you Modern? Grandmaster Ernesto. Okay. It comes from Modern, but Professor and his brothers hadn't trained for a long time, and he came over in the States. And the small circuit jiu-jitsu is a big part of the Modern Arnis. The tappy-tappy was a development after the States. The Stonewall boxing after he got in the States. There's a lot of things that he developed after the States that those brothers don't have. And, Remy was here, and his brothers were down here. I was very fortunate to train with those two people, but there's no question on who was Kuya and who would have been older, who would have been the senior brother, whether or not he was older or not. I mean, Remy fought for Anchon Bakan. He was part of the Balintawak Club. You don't do that if you're not good. All the brothers have talent, but Remy created Modern, Ernesto created Combatant, and Roberto created Arnis de Mano, the Negro Arnis de Mano. And saying that someone created something else, and you can't sit there and say, it's Remy Presas Combatant because it came from Modern Arnis. No. Ernesto was, did it come from? It would be like calling it Remy's Combatant would be like calling it Yip Man's Jeet Kune Do. Bruce created Jeet Kune Do. Yes, Yip Man taught him, and there's influences from there, no question about it. But he was the one that put this together. Ernesto put Combatant together. Roberto put Negro Arnis de Mano. Remy created Modern. So that's probably the most PC way I could put it. And I like it. I like the whole family. I'm friends with Roberto. I was good friends with Ernesto, and obviously Remy and I had a father-son relationship. I still talk to members of the Presas family. Ernesto's daughter periodically, one of Remy's daughters. I bumped into one of Remy's son-in-laws recently at the Secret Round gathering. And I actually stayed at his house. I was like, oh, why do I know you? So that's a thing. That's a thing for me. That was just getting it out there, and it's there's no ill will. It's just that setting the record straight. So.
Which needs to be done. I wasn't aware that was going on.
Well, there's also Modern Arnis people saying that they learned Balintawak. And I go, where did you learn Balintawak? Well, Remy, all the tappy-tappy. That is not Balintawak. Oh my God, no. Tappy-tappy's tappy-tappy. Elements of tappy-tappy came from Balintawak. There's no question. But the thing, that's a whole nother... there was multiple drills that were put together, and one drill was tappy-tappy, the other was solo baston semi-sparring. Then eventually it was all put under one category, or one name, but they're different categories, and one of those categories is directly influenced by Balintawak. But if you think you've done, as a Modern Arnis guy, if you think you've learned Balintawak because you're doing Modern Arnis, you're clueless. That's why Remy opened the door for me to train with Ted Buat. I learned real Balintawak. And now I'm hanging out with the legends of FMA Tour. I get to hang out with Grandmaster Bobby Taboda. Once again, another branch of the Balintawak tree. But if you think Modern Arnis is teaching you all that, you got it twisted. It's about giving proper credit for stuff. So.